So nice to be together on this Sabbath of song, celebrating the music of one of my heroines, Debbie Friedman, whose yahrzeit was just 2 weeks ago, and also nice to be together, of course, to celebrate the memory of our founding rabbi. And I was so lucky to spend some time with Rabbi Zeldin when I started here almost 10 years ago, and I know how much he cherished the musical stories of our people, so it's a bit beshert that it's Shabbat Shirah tonight. This is a Sabbath that knows how to sing. Tomorrow at Spirit of Shabbat here at Wise and at synagogues all around the world, we will read Shirat Hayam, which is the biblical poem, the Song of the Sea, that describes the moment when the Israelites, newly freed from slavery, reach the far shore, and they have this amazing discovery. They discover that speech cannot contain or explain what they are feeling, what they've just lived through. Words are no longer sufficient for their gratitude, their awe, their relief. The human response is simply song. That's why music holds such a sacred place, I think, in Judaism, and why it matters so deeply on this Shabbat, in particular when we read it. Song is not an ornament added to our tradition. It is one of the ways in which revelation itself is transmitted. I think one of my rabbis said a few moments ago already that what's really striking about the Song of the Sea is that it erupts from the Israelite before their new life has even settled. The water is churning behind them and they don't even know what's ahead of them. So Jewish song from the very beginning is not a reward, it's the sound of our survival. It's the sound of adjusting to everything that we're facing. It's the sound of truly living in the moment. It's the sound of people who have endured slavery and crossing the open sea, something so incredibly terrifying, and yet somehow we are still both trembling and accessing our joy. Now, immediately after Moses leads the people from Egypt, the Torah tells us that Miriam, the prophetess, takes her timbrel in her hand and leads the women in song and dance. And I love this. As a little sister of an older brother, Miriam doesn't just echo the ideas already spoken by her brothers. Hers are the first sounds of a free people. Her voice totally shifts the energy of the moment and reminds us that redemption is not complete unless both women and men's voices are heard. Women's voices not just as accompaniment or as commentary, but as an integral part of our community's leadership. And we see that Revelation does not end with God speaking to Moses, but that it's going to have so many manifestations through our lineage. And some of the most transformative spiritual leadership in our tradition arrives through rhythm and movement and midrash and poetry, and of course through song. And thankfully, Miriam's song didn't end at the sea. It moves throughout Jewish history, carried by men and women who sang Judaism forward in their own homes, at their Shabbat tables, in concentration camps, in army bases, and in sanctuaries. Often without formal authority or enormous spiritual power. And in the late 20th century, that lineage had a name that many of us know by heart, or perhaps it's even new for you tonight, the name of Debbie Friedman. Deborah Lynn Friedman was born in 1951 and had a vast canon. She wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs throughout her life and career, and unfortunately, she passed in 2011. She blended Hebrew prayer with, as you can hear, the most accessible and folk-inspired melodies. But before I speak about her influence or her place in Jewish music, I think it's worth remembering how all of us encounter. It's not just, we don't just meet her by hearing about who she was, but we hear her through her songs. We sing Lichilach to open so many of our life cycle moments, every single baby naming, every B'nai Mitzvah service. As Rabbi Yoshi said, we meet her in hospital rooms and at Shiva Minyanim when we sing Misha Berach. She's at our Shabbat tables. She opens us with vulnerability. You heard the high, high joy of Hallelujah and that Zionist anthem of Im Tirtzu, which even Israelis think is written by an Israeli, but it's really just written by Debbie. She didn't just write Jewish music. I think she embodied Miriam's legacy, and I'll always look up to her for that. So tonight, a little bit of teaching of a few of her songs before we keep singing together, but it doesn't go without saying that the arrangements that you hear tonight are completely original. It is a rare idea to set folk music to a string quartet. So I would like to thank the singular Dr. Tali Tadmore for this amazing idea and how she implemented it. Thank you, Tali. And to Tomas and David and Anna and Clement who are playing with us. It's just so beautiful, so thank you. So you might know that there are a few melodies in Jewish tradition that are called Misinai melodies, right? Most of them are at least 1,000 years old, but they're songs that feel really sacred and ancient, like Avinu Malkeinu, or Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, or Kol Nidre Ve'esore. Those are all Misinai melodies, but it's interesting. Before, as Rabbi, you were reading my mind, before Debbie wrote her prayer for healing, it was a prayer that was sort of brief and functional. People moved past it in the Siddur. But Debbie, she slowed it down. She made it melodic. She made it memorable. It felt so ancient, as important as if we were singing it at Sinai. This melody really reshaped, reform at least, Jewish liturgy itself. And I love this melody because it doesn't promise cures or easy answers. It just insists on being present and grounded. And when we sing it together each week, when you sing it with me and I hear your voices, it makes me feel like healing is really about community, about faith, and about hope. Debbie also did some magic with Torah itself. You heard as we opened the service, L'chilach. She transformed what I imagine to be one of the most daunting moments of all of Torah. God approaches Abraham and says, "Go forth." And her melody doesn't hold that daunting sense. It doesn't rush Abraham. It doesn't rush us. It just walks alongside us with this calling for our people. And she even puts this famous line, Lech Lecha, which is God speaking to Abraham, into the female, Lechilach. So we're all included. All of Israel is addressed into the going forth and making the world a better place. This is Torah, tender and uncertain and full of questions, so inclusive and beautiful and brave. And Oseh Shalom, it's not the Hirsch, which you know, Oseh Shalom Imromav, which is almost Misinai itself, right? I don't know any Jew who doesn't know that melody. But Debbie wrote her own, and it was so important to her that her melodies were sung as she wrote them. So significant. So it was really common at concerts or performances of hers, she would start to sing it, Oseh Shalom, and she'd hear, Bimromav, a descending melodic line, and she would stop. There's some great videos of her, and she would say, that is not how I wrote it. She would say, it's Oseh Shalom, Bimromav. She wanted to keep us grounded. She wanted to keep us singing it the way that she wrote it. So we owe that to her. We owe it to her to sing her melodies, her gifts to us. And lastly, just to bring it full circle, I'll say that her setting of Miriam's song, which also really brilliantly overlaps with the Mi Chamocha that you heard a few minutes ago, makes the lineage really explicit. Through her music, through Debbie's music, Miriam is restored to us. She's not a footnote. She's our prophet. She's our leader. She's someone whose joy that was shared was so incredibly sacred. She reminded us that liberation has always been noisy, and that Jews have always been noisy, and that we've always needed tambourines alongside our books and our tablets. So on this Shabbat Shirah, Debbie, thank you for blessing us with these melodies. And may we, like Miriam and Debbie, like all of our ancestors who came before us, trust that when we sing together, redemption will draw just a little bit closer. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be God's will.